Hello YouTube. So I haven't made a video on issues involving Canadian politics in a long time. But there's an issue that I wanted to comment on. It's an issue that's raising a lot of tension here in Canada, particularly in the province of Quebec. Now, I was born in Quebec. I am un Québécois. I suppose you could say. But evidently, now I tend to speak English far more than I speak French. It happens when you live in Ontario for a while. But one of the things that sort of irks me about what's going on in Quebec right now is that essentially the province has decided, or the Parti Québécois decided that it's a political party, Parti Québécois. They decided that in Quebec they had certain values, and that those values, they would run on those values. Kind of like what Stephen Harper did, kind of like what the Democrats do, or the Republicans do in the U.S. They choose a bunch of values and try to impose them on a bunch of people, instead of just allowing people to decide, sort of organize their values on their own, letting culture form by itself, or impose your own cultural views and cultural norms above all. The thing that irks me about it all is that a lot of the Québécois seem to have this view that, well, this is our culture, this is our country, this is our province, so it's okay if we force our cultural views upon all those who inhabit these lands. No, it's not. I also find it really odd, and I'll tell you why it's not, because it either is or isn't true. And here's the big catch-22 problem here, is that if it is true that even though the English defeated the French on the plains of Abraham, and therefore annexed Quebec into the English Empire, so to speak, then Quebec is nothing more than a subjugated or a subject of the British Crown. In that sort of mindset, the sort of statist or imperialist mindset. Now, for a person from Quebec to point to this and state that this is wrong, that this is unjust, that people of Quebec have a distinct culture and should be allowed to express this culture and to live by those cultural values. For a person to say this, they are correct. But then to say that others must therefore live based on their cultural values, they are wrong, because guess what? If you say it's wrong for English Canada to subjugate French Quebec, even after English Canada defeated French Quebec, then if the French Quebec subjugates First Nations that inhabit the province of Quebec, because on the basis of them having won wars and having subjugated the First Nations, whom the entire province of Quebec, let's face it, the land belongs to the First Nations, not you. So even if you were, if you make the one claim that you are free of the British Crown, then the First Nations people are free of you, of your subjugation. You can't have it both ways. If you try to have it both ways, then the argument that you're trying to make is that might is right, and you are stronger than the First Nations. But if that's the case, English Canada evidently is stronger than you. There's more of them. And they beat you before. So if might does not make right, then what makes right? What makes right is what is just. What is just? What is just is respecting individuals, not groups. Get out of the groupthink. Respect people as individuals. So if a person, for some reason, is Christian or is Muslim or is Jewish, and they have, I don't know, some sort of, this isn't a religious symbol, but say they have like some sort of a religious emblem on them. Say they wear some sort of head garment, I don't know, they're Sikhs and they wear a sort of turban, or say they wear a sort of a cross. Although, yeah, that's right, crosses were exempt from this because of their cultural value within Quebec culture. Fuck you, assholes. Truth is, okay? Truth is, you can't exempt that by saying this forms Quebec cultural values, because then again, you fall into the whole thing, well, Quebec isn't really your country after all. You kind of stole that land. And if you say it is your country, then no, because the Canadians evidently stole that land from you by defeating you on the Plains of Abraham. Catch-22. So it's either you respect individuals who inhabit the province, and that, of course, bolsters your argument for a separate Quebec. Because if you are going to be intellectually honest with the argument of why it is just for Quebec to have its own nation, based on the fact that it is not right for another culture to subjugate or annex another culture, then Québécois can't go around subjugating other cultures which inhabit the lands that are now called Quebec. It's just intellectual honesty. To make the argument in any other way is not intellectually honest. So it does irk me, because what Quebec is trying to say is they're trying to create a secular state by force. This is the Richard Dawkins slash Christopher Hitchens wet dream, where a state by force forces secularism upon the people. Sort of like, you will not practice that religion, or if you work in the public sector, you won't practice it. But now they're even going to the private sector because they're pressing the private sector to follow its lead on secular workplaces, which means no religion, no religious emblems or whatnot. Why? Why not? What's so offensive about a turban? What's so offensive about a person walking around with a Quran in hand? Who cares? It's their own faith, their own religion. It doesn't offend me to see it. That's not what offends me. What offends me is the imposition of the religion upon me. And it's not by seeing it that it is imposed upon me. It's by being forced by a state to adhere to its tenets. So living under the Iranian regime would be an imposition for me. But it's the same living under the Quebec regime that is imposed. Well, I don't live there, but if I did, would be imposing its views upon me. That's the problem. The problem is the imposition of your views upon me. That's what threatens me. That's what angers me. That's what I find to be unjust, and that's what you should find to be unjust just as much, just as well. It's a popularity stunt, because the Parti Québécois know that predominantly the people who inhabit Quebec tend to be Québécois. In the sense of tend to be Québécois, they tend to be of the Français Canadien, Caucasian Québécois lineage, and they want to tap, because they have abysmal approval ratings, they want to tap into a bit of nationalistic fervor by touching on the question of culture, which seems to be very pertinent to a lot of the Québécois people, mostly because of a history of subjugation by English Canada. But much like Israel, it's wrong for Israel to go around and subjugate other nations on the basis of the Holocaust. It's kind of wrong, it's just as wrong, for Quebec to do the same. If it's wrong for Syria to use chemical weapons, it's wrong for Israel to use white phosphorus, as an example. It's wrong to use chemical weapons, evidently. I'm not saying, well then, it's okay for both nations to use them. I'm just saying, it's wrong. Duh. But it's wrong all the way through. And as a moral, ethical, or intellectual consistent argument, you should view it as being wrong, no matter who's using those weapons. It's not because they support a certain view as somewhat correct. It's like, you will love others, or nukes! It doesn't work that way. Anyways, that's my 2 cents. Peace.